Hello viewers, it's your girl Ruby Fangirl. It's been quite a long while since I've done a Poppy Playtime stuff, hasn't it? I mean, quite literally like a couple of weeks ago, but I decided to talk about one of the most popular antagonists of Poppy Playtime, and that's of course Catnap. Personally, my favorite out of like the Poppy Playtime villains, and also you guys chose him like a few weeks ago, so you guys made a really good choice. And before I get started, with like the Death Battle reaction video you put out, I just want to say like thank you guys so much for really enjoying it and doing a lot of positive like comments and stuff like that. It really means like a lot to me. I mean, yeah, this is not like the very first like lot of like views I watched. I mean, my first one is actually Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which I'm actually quite happy that that's actually the case, because I mean, that was the first time that it was like increasing even after all this time, which really caught me off guard. But yeah, once again, I just want to say thank you guys so much. And in response to this, I'm actually gonna do like reaction videos at some point in the future. But yeah, because for those who don't know, who just like subscribed, I'm actually planning to do a reaction of a fan-made show that will be released in January, basically. Actually, would be like the very first thing I'm going to release in January, so yeah. And you're probably wondering what that is. To all the new subscribers, it's called Disventure Camp. I mean, you pretty sure saw it with the few videos I made, and they're releasing Season 5. To the newcomers, like, why are you saying you want me to them doing Season 5? Well, because I just want to get, like, Season 4 and all the other stuff out of the way so I can watch, like, the new season with all of you guys and see my reaction to it. Since you love my reaction of poor Ruby dying, so, in the Death Battle episode, so, yeah. Like, seriously, that was a low blow. Poor Ruby, though. Anyway, once again, thank you guys so much for that. It really means a lot. But, anyways, back to like what I was saying previously about Catnap. So, for the purpose of like this, I'm going to be talking about the history of Experiment 1188, aka Catnap. So basically, for those who don't know, Catnap is basically one of like the bigger bodies that came out during the time of like Poppy Playtime. But before we get into all of that, we must go back, all the way back before he became as Catnap, and he was a child known as Theodore Graham Bell. So Theodore Graham Bell was a child at play care, but unlike the other children, he wasn't the best child, because he was antisocial and didn't really have any friends. So basically, he was basically a problem child. And then at some point, he will develop an imaginary friend. At least, that was the staff thought. Because this imaginary friend isn't imaginary, but rather the prototype. Yes, he somehow escaped and made it to Home Sweet Home and befriended Theodore. At least, well, that's what Theo thought, because he thought that he finally had a friend. But the prototype was using that to his advantage, because keep in mind, a troubled mind is very easy to manipulate. So he decided to befriend Theo and basically tell him what exactly to do. Because in response to this, he has been basically like going through files, and if he ever got caught, he would just blame it on his imaginary friend. So I think that's how the staff just believed it was just imaginary, even though in reality that's not the case. So, and then at some point they managed to get 2 grab pack hands, and one night the prototype decides that one of those nights they'll escape the factory and get out of this factory basically. But due to Theodore being extremely young at the time, he was around like 7, I believe. I could be wrong, but he was around like that age. And while attempting to use the grab pack without not much knowledge of it, he electrocuted himself. Like, oh my god, like that is just dark right there. Because since the prototype thought that he can actually make his escape because it was right there. But in an unexpected twist, instead of leaving, he saves Theo by returning him and bringing him to, like, the hospital and stuff like that, or, like, Thomas Clark's office, basically, like, it's not really like a hospital, just, like, the doctors, basically. But, of course, this heroic act led him to being, like, put back in, like, in the cell. So it looked like he actually does care, but he might have realized something, because the child listened to everything he said, and he thought he could use that to his advantage. But before we get to that, Theodore had to go through hell, because first he got electrocuted, and then after that, he will be the candidate to become the bigger body version of Catnap. So I'm not going to go into full detail about, like, how, like, what they put in, basically, like, how they created him and stuff like that, but there is one thing that is extremely important, is that, like, the red smoke. For those who don't know, the red smoke is a gas that was created with the scent of poppy flowers, and they use it to make the children fall asleep and stuff like that. But there were some negative side effects to it, by basically hallucinating and basically getting nightmares. So yeah, that is not great. But the scientists said, fair enough, and they decided to use Catnap, since they actually revealed, like, in, like, the show at the beginning of the game, that Catnap has the ability to release the red smoke and basically put everyone to sleep. Which, yeah, because that's great. And so they decided to use him to basically do his job, is to watch over Home Sweet Home and put, like, the children to sleep, basically, so they can, be taken and experimented on. Which, yeah, that's also, like, extremely dark right there. Like, can I just say, like, Chapter 3 is just the darkest chapter, and I love it just for that reason? Anyway, and now with Catnap's success, he was a breathing experiment. But there was an incident that occurred because they tried to give him, like, an adjustment period, but he snapped and basically attacked everyone. And it took, like, a few tranquil darts to subdue him, but at the cost of, like, a lot of lives. And yeah, that's not great, isn't it? But despite this, he was a massive success, and they let him out into play care. Great! But unlike, like, the other ones, we don't know, like, when, like, the other ones were created, because actually is proven that there were, like, the other smiling critters that they made into a bigger body, even though we only know, like, 4 ones up to this point, because we know of Catnap, Dante, Hoppy, and Bobby Bearhug. So yeah, that's all that we know of at this point, like 4 out of the 8, basically. So yeah, because but for one of them, we'll get to that later. And so basically, things were all going great. However, there was one thing that was separating him from the rest, and that's, of course, his relationship with the prototype. So that means at some point they found each other, and if Catnap remembers him, or he just took a liking to him again, because it has been kind of implied in the Poppy Playtime games that some of the experiments do remember what they are, and some of them don't. Which it's confusing to me, but if someone wants to help me on that, please comment down below because I don't know, like, how that is, even with research and stuff, so I don't know. Regardless, because every time they're in a room together, the Catnap will just follow him around like a lost puppy and begin to worship him as if he were a god. And great, now he's being manipulated again. And, well, little did they know, the relationship between these two will become the major downfall. Well, there are, like, other things, but that's in Chapter 4, but we're not going to get to that. We're only going to stick, like, to the Chapter 3 stuff, okay? Just to let you know on that. And so they all became, like, a plan, and what is that plan? The Hour of Joy. Yep. So basically, Catnap was able to convince most of, like, the experiments to take upon the slaughter and go after the humans in rebellion for basically, like, creating, like, experiments out of children. And after the massacre was over, of course, they dragged all the bodies down, and they eat on them for the next decade, basically. But during, like, those few times, Catnap has done some really, really few things. For example, locking up the Mr. Lights and leaving one of them alive to basically cannibalize them. And Catnap come over, and basically they came up with a deal that Catnap will give her food in exchange for, like, worshipping the prototype or basically, like, following his rules and reporting them if there's anything suspicious to him and the prototype. And they both agreed, but there were also very dark things. You see, not everyone took part in the slaughter. And what did Catnap do to those few experiments? He tortured them, and because that's what they do to heretics. That was explained to Dog Day to us, that they basically use them as food for the other experiments to feed on. Which, yeah, that's really dark if you don't follow the prototype. And the Catnap would definitely kill them just for this reason, basically torturing them to death, which is really, really dark. And this will go on like for a decade until the player returns to the factory. And so here's when we get to like the gameplay and stuff like that. I'm gonna go through each time we actually see Catnap. Basically the most important things. After we basically crash the train over, Catnap picks us up, throws in the dumpster to basically almost try to kill us. But we managed to escape, and the last time we see him, he's actually in Home Sweet Home. Yep. Because he basically used the red gas on us to hallucinate things, basically guilt that's really haunting us. And throughout, like, this is a sequence, you can see Catnap appearing in different areas. After, like, the VHS tape and stuff, we wake up and we basically regenerate the power and then go off. And we don't see Catnap again until we reach the caves. Because once we reach to, like, the caves, you see, when you turn this way, you see a shrine, and Catnap walks up and begins to pray. This is definitely hinting, or just basically telling us, that Catnap worships the prototype as if he were a god. But considering none of the other experiments, like, view him as a god, that means Catnap just has a full dedication to him. Like, oh my god. But then after seeing this revelation, Ollie, if you've seen, like, my Chapter 4 gameplay, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He begins explaining about, like, the shrine and stuff like that, and basically what happened to Catnap as Theodore. So, yeah, I already explained it, so we're gonna move on from that. I just want to point that out there. And then next time we see him is in the counselor's office, where Catnap, like, basically jumps out of nowhere to get a Bunzo Bunny toy, basically to frickin' eat him. And then, once we grab the battery, he lunges at us and sends us back into a hallucinative state. And Catnap, with the voice of Poppy, begins to try to convince us to, like, are you really going to do this, basically? But then, after we wake up, he speaks to us. Even though this is not the first time we heard him speak because of a VHS tape, one of my favorite VHS tapes, by the way. But in this moment, he says, "Please take care, or I'm coming for you." Yeah, that is really dark and kind of convincing enough to leave, but nope, we are here to destroy the prototype. And the final time we see him is in the final battle, where he basically red smokes the area, comes at us as a boneless monster, basically a colorless monster, and throughout, like, the battle, like, charging out batteries, and he appears over, like everywhere. When he lunges down, we use the grab pack hand, and we fire at him, and then he basically gets electrocuted, set on fire, and then the prototype comes forward, reaches his hand out, and Catnap, a little bit afraid, decides to go in his prayer stance. And because he thinks that the prototype's going to save him. But in reality, he kills him. And, well, now Catnap has been betrayed. And that's the last time that we see Catnap. Basically, his story comes to an end. Just like how I explained it, this just gets really dark. Like, I'm just saying. So, I really hope you guys really enjoy me talking about, like, this iconic character. Yeah, because even though that this Catnap does not breathe, like, the red smoke and stuff like that, so I'm definitely fine. So, I'd like to know from you guys, do you think that this story was interesting about, like, this iconic character? I would like to know.
Hello, it's me in the future. I forgot to mention this for the last, like, few seconds, is that,
that I have like a Discord page, so please join like the fangirl server and stuff like that. I'll leave like a link in the description, and also I did put it on like my basically on top of the channel if it's a lot more easy for you guys to get on. So let's get back to me right now. And now I will see you guys in the next video.